Within the sleepy and peaceful nation of Canada, a war rages on. Two groups, the Hells Angels and the Outlaws, battle for supremacy, causing a stir in the criminal underworld in Canada. Yves Apache Trudeau, a top hitman for the Hells Angels, leads the charge against the Outlaws in this violent conflict. The Outlaws are no match for the mighty Hells Angels, who overpower them at every turn. Defeated and depleted, the Outlaws retreat to Ontario, where they have a slight advantage. Meanwhile, the Laval chapter, a branch of the Hells Angels, led by Yves Trudeau, plays a pivotal role in driving the Outlaws out of Quebec. But the Laval chapter has its own problems, with many members struggling with drug addiction and violating club rules. As a result of their aggressive tactics, they also find themselves targeted by the police, who harass them and bring unwanted attention to the chapter. The bosses of the Hells Angels begin to fear for their reputation, and the police attention pressures the Hells Angels, who ultimately decide the Laval chapter has outlived its usefulness. They decide to destroy the Laval chapter, one of their own. Under the guise of a meeting to discuss problems in a Hells Angels clubhouse in Lennoxville, the Canadian Hells Angels bosses order the Laval chapter to attend. Yves Trudeau, however, has checked himself into a detox clinic a week prior and is unable to attend. The members of the Laval chapter who show up expect to be congratulated. Instead, they fall into a deadly trap. While a few survive the ambush, the majority are mercilessly wiped out. This brutal incident is still remembered as the Lennoxville Purge. In the aftermath, Yves Trudeau, the #1 hitman of the Hells Angels and part of the Laval chapter, feels betrayed and chooses to cooperate with the police. His cooperation leads to the arrest of 39 Hells Angels members, a staggering blow to the notorious criminal organization. But there is one man who, despite the Lennoxville Purge, or rather because of it, wants to join the Hells Angels. As it turns out, he will not only join them, but lead them into their next war. Maurice Boucher is born in 1953 into a family far from perfect. His alcoholic father is a violent man who terrorizes his family, while his mother struggles to keep them together. Maurice has 7 siblings, and his childhood is anything but idyllic. His mother is his rock, while his father is the cause of endless pain and suffering. Maurice's life takes a sharp turn when he drops out of school in the 9th grade. By then, he is already addicted to drugs, and he finds himself on a dark path that will lead him to a life of crime. He tries to work on a construction site, but he is fired after just 1 week due to his addiction. From there, his criminal career takes off. At the age of 19, he commits his first robbery, stealing $300 from a store. This is just the beginning, and he goes on to break into 3 more properties. However, the law catches up with him soon enough, and he is sent to prison for 6 months. It is just the first of many times that he will be in and out of prison. But there are moments of hope in his life too. After his release from prison, he manages to find a job in a factory, and for 4 years he tries to live a straight life. But his past catches up with him, and he finds himself drawn into the world of motorcycle gangs. He meets Salvatore Cassetta, a man who becomes his close friend and is also a leader in a biker club. At the same time, the war between the Outlaws and the Hells Angels is heating up. The Hells Angels are trying to establish a foothold in Canada, and Boucher and Cassetta are on their radar. But fate has other plans for Boucher. He is arrested again, this time for a sex offense with a minor, and he is sentenced to 40 months in prison. While he is behind bars, the Lennoxville Purge takes place. The brutal massacre will forever change the biker scene in Canada. Salvatore Cassetta is appalled by the Hells Angels' actions and decides to go his own way, rather than joining them. With this, the Rock Machine Nomads are born, led by Salvatore Cassetta and his brother. Boucher, however, has a completely different view of these events. He agrees with the way the Hells Angels act. He has long admired the Hells Angels for their brutal tactics and brotherhood. When they offer him a place among their ranks, he jumps at the chance. Boucher becomes a fully fledged member of the Hells Angels in 1986 and quickly rises through the ranks. Yves Trudeau cooperates with the police after the Lennoxville incident, and 2 of the Hells Angels' most powerful bosses are now on the run. One is arrested while the other is able to flee to Morocco. The two bosses are therefore no longer in power, leaving a huge power vacuum. Maurice Boucher can simply win people over with his charisma, and so he gets to a leadership position pretty quickly. When he learns that a rival gangster is at a bar, he brazenly walks in and shoots him. The incident proves fatal, but despite being unmasked, the police are unable to find any witnesses willing to testify against him. As the Hells Angels reorganize after several high-profile arrests, a man named Walter Stadnik rises to become national president of the organization. Stadnik recognizes Boucher's ruthless leadership potential and quickly puts him in charge of the Montreal chapter. It's during this time that Boucher earns the nickname Mom, as he micromanages his followers, making sure every detail of their assignments has been thought through. Boucher's ambition doesn't stop there. He still sees the outlaws as a threat to his control of Quebec and becomes determined to wipe them out once and for all. With his cunning and ruthless tactics, Boucher sets his sights on achieving ultimate power. His first move is a brutal one, a bomb that obliterates the outlaw clubhouse and sends a clear message: the Hells Angels mean business. But the aftermath of the bombing takes an unexpected turn when the president of the Danville Outlaws contacts Boucher, offering to join forces with the Hells Angels. It's a tempting offer, but Boucher sees an opportunity for even greater power. He declines the offer, instead convincing the Outlaws' rocker to remain in his position and provide the Hells Angels with critical information about his former comrades. Thanks to this newfound inside information, the Hells Angels are able to launch attack after devastating attack against the Outlaws, gradually whittling down their numbers. At their lowest point, the Outlaws are reduced to a mere 10 members, and they finally make the decision to completely retreat, leaving Quebec to the Hells Angels. But are the Hells Angels now really untouchable? With two strong leadership figures like Stadnik and Boucher, who dares to mess with them? With their rivals vanquished, the Hells Angels stand triumphant as the undisputed kings of the Quebec biker scene. Boucher's bold tactics have paid off, but he knows that maintaining his power will require even greater ruthlessness in the years to come. The Mafia also appoints the Hells Angels as one of their most important business partners. In the dark and shadowy world of organized crime, power is everything. And in Canada, the Rizzuto family is the most powerful criminal organization, holding sway over almost all the street gangs in the country. With their international connections spanning across New York, Sicily, and Colombia, the Rizzutos control the drug trade, deciding who is allowed to distribute narcotics in Canada. And one of their biggest buyers? The Hells Angels. The Rizzuto family has a vast network which extends from the construction industry to politics and even law enforcement agencies. Judges and police officers are on their payroll, ensuring their influence reaches every corner of Quebec. At the center of this criminal empire is now Maurice "Mom" Boucher. Rising to become one of the most powerful men in Quebec, Boucher and the Hells Angels are making millions every month through their partnership with the Mafia. But despite their success, there is one rival gang that constantly threatens Boucher's hold on power: the Rock Machine Nomads. With their own sizable network, the Rock Machine are equally active in the drug trade, spreading their influence to restaurants, nightclubs, and other businesses. But Boucher simply cannot do anything against them, because the leader of the Rock Machine is his old friend Salvatore Cassetta, who also has powerful friends. A high-ranking Mafia member is on Cassetta's side. He seemed untouchable until in 1994, when Cassetta is arrested by the police with a massive stash of drugs, providing a unique opportunity for Boucher to strike. He sends his men to the various shops of the Rock Machine, offering them a choice: either sell only the dope he gives them, or face the consequences. This ultimatum is not just aimed at the Rock Machine, but at all criminal organizations in the city. Either buy from the Hells Angels, or pay the price. The Rock Machine MC refused to submit to the Hells Angels' dominance and begin to search for allies. They find them in the form of street gangs like the Pelletier clan, and secret businessmen involved in the narcotics trade, like the Dark Circle. Together, they hatch a plan to take down the Hells Angels. The street gangs and rockers are willing to fight on the front lines, while the Dark Circle provides financial support for the cause. It is a risky and dangerous endeavor, but they are willing to risk it all for the chance to topple the Hells Angels' stranglehold on the criminal underworld of Montreal. This is a turning point in the city's criminal history, and one that will have far-reaching consequences for years to come. The Rocker War in Quebec officially starts on July 13, 1993, as the Rock Machine Nomads launch their first attack. 3 of their members arrive at a business owned by a Hells Angels and take him out. The next day, they shoot another Hells Angels member, who survives the incident but is rushed to the hospital. The police soon catch wind that the Rockers are planning to blow up a Hells Angels clubhouse and arrest 5 Nomad members. In response, the Hells Angels bosses hold a meeting and decide to declare war. And so, the madness begins. Bombs are used, and shootings take place in broad daylight. Each action is immediately followed by a revenge attack. On October 28th, the Hells Angels are able to take out the leader of the Pelletier clan, adding fuel to the already raging fire. His brother then assumes control and seeks personal revenge against the Hells Angels leader, Boucher. The plan involves parking a truck loaded with explosives in front of Boucher's favorite restaurant, with the intent of causing devastating damage. However, a police officer inadvertently foils the plan by noticing that the truck is not authorized to be on the road. As the conflict rages on, both sides suffer numerous casualties, and the situation becomes increasingly challenging for the police. With most of the Rockers refusing to cooperate with the authorities, solving many of the cases proves to be an uphill battle. Moreover, corruption within the police force only adds to their difficulties. But in 1995, a crucial breakthrough occurs. The police find someone who will become a key player in the investigation, Danny Kane, a Hells Angels hangaround. Kane had been trying to become a full-patched member of the Hells Angels for some time, but he had only been given the dirty work. His eventual breakthrough came when he was tasked with leading the Demon Keepers, a newly formed rocker club of the Hells Angels, but they were quickly busted by the police. Kane felt used and betrayed by the Hells Angels and decided to cooperate with investigators. He provided valuable information about the Hells Angels' operations, as well as information about the Mafia in Montreal. Kane also revealed that the Montreal and Quebec police were largely on Maurice Boucher's payroll. After his statements, Kane then returns to the streets and begins his work as an informer. But things escalate to a higher level. A drug dealer with ties to the Hells Angels is killed when his car is blown up. Tragically, an 11-year-old boy playing in a nearby park is also hit and dies 4 days later. The public is outraged, demanding action be taken against the biker gangs. However, the corrupt police force poses a major obstacle to justice. Even if a Hells Angels member is arrested, judges and juries are often bribed, rendering convictions impossible. Despite this, Operation Wolverine is launched with the aim of ending the biker war once and for all. Investigator André Bouchard leads the charge, determined to bring justice to the victims and their families. With prior experience investigating biker gangs, having worked on the Popeyes MC case, and intimate knowledge of Maurice Boucher from previous investigations, Bouchard is a valuable asset to the team. However, he is not alone in his quest for justice, as other investigators join him, refusing to be intimidated by the bikers. Together, they work tirelessly to bring an end to the violence and hold those responsible accountable for their actions. As Bouchard continues his investigation into the Hells Angels, he becomes a thorn in the side of Maurice Boucher, the notorious leader of the gang. Boucher decides to take matters into his own hands and provoke Bouchard by holding meetings in his favorite cafe, which is then filled with Hells Angels. But Bouchard doesn't back down and continues to show up with a table full of police officers, leading to intense stare-downs between the two groups. However, Boucher soon learns from one of his bribed officers that there is a rat in his ranks. He forms a small elite group called the Nomads to find out who the traitor is. Meanwhile, Bouchard becomes convinced that some of his colleagues are on the take and decides to leave Operation Wolverine. In the meantime, the informant Kane is given a dangerous mission to take out a member of Hells Angels. This target had landed on the hit list after getting into a bar fight with a mafia member. But as Kane sets out to complete the task, The search for the rat within the Hells Angels organization intensifies. Suspicion turns to a man named Steinert, who had recently won a court case, surprisingly. But as the pressure mounts, Steinert starts to suspect Kane, who is the actual informant. In order to pull his head out of the noose, Kane devises a cunning plan. He uses his position in the police to manipulate them into seizing a shipment, and then intentionally frames Steinert for the crime. This maneuver creates an atmosphere of distrust and suspicion within the group, as Steinert was suspected of being the rat. To make matters worse, Kane accuses Steinert and the other rocker involved in the altercation with the mafia, causing them to become targets. Eventually, both the rocker and Steinert are found dead, and it seems that Kane has successfully covered his tracks. But Boucher remains convinced that there are more informants among them, and he decides to take drastic action, drawing up a hit list of names of authorities. The first two targets are prison guards who get assassinated by members of the Hells Angels nomads immediately. The city of Quebec is once again thrown into chaos and fear at the brazen violence. Boucher opens his own operation called Harm after those incidents to find the killers of the officers. They conduct countless raids and make countless arrests. They get one to talk who reveals one of the assassins. His name is Stefan Gagne. Gagne confesses everything and also gives the name of his accomplices. One of them flees to Mexico, while the other is found dead. The most important thing is that Gagne agrees to identify Boucher as the client. On the 18th of December 1997, Maurice Boucher therefore gets arrested. A year later, the trial opens, but things turn out differently than expected. The judge acts in Boucher's interest, even though he is known for being one of the toughest. He believes Boucher and his team of lawyers, and Maurice Boucher is acquitted. With that, Maurice Boucher becomes a free man again, and seems untouchable. He is also almost winning the war against the Rock Machine nomads. A member of the Dark Circle decides to switch sides and betrays many of its members who were financial backers, which results in Dark Circle members being eliminated in favor of Boucher. Some members opt to surrender to the police and serve time in prison. Boucher likely seeks to weaken the opposing mafia and gain sole power. Then, a Hells Angels member-turned-informant reveals that Boucher is behind a murder of a man doing business with the mafia. As a result, 11 people close to the mafia and Hells Angels are taken out. A journalist covering the case is also shot after accusing Boucher of being the client. Fortunately, he survives the attack. The incident sparks riots calling for stricter laws. Vito Rizzuto, the mafia godfather, is not thrilled with the whole situation, as it brings a lot of attention to his business in the underworld. His frustration boils over. He knows he must take action, and so he threatens the Hells Angels and the Rock Machine. Vito tells them that he will stop the deliveries if they do not put an end to their war. The tension is high, and the stakes are even higher. Soon after, a meeting is called between Maurice Boucher, the leader of the Hells Angels, and the Rock Machine nomad's boss. Vito watches on as the two men shake hands, hoping that this marks the end of the conflict and the profitable underworld business can continue. However, the story takes a turn when Boucher arrests Boucher again. This time, the case is retried, despite Boucher being acquitted at the time. The authorities classify the case in such a way that the Hells Angels had intimidated the jury during the first trial. This new trial is an impactful occasion, and everyone is on edge. In the end, Boucher is found guilty, and he is given a life sentence. The room is silent, and everyone knows that the verdict will have consequences for years to come. As time passes, Boucher faces many challenges in prison. He is attacked multiple times, and the Hells Angels even kick him out of their club. It is a harsh reality for someone who was once so powerful. But justice has been served, and the world is a safer place because of it.